Hi everyone, Peter here from Flow High Performance, and in this video we'll be covering how to structure a week of strength and conditioning training for athletes. The most fundamental component of creating a weekly training structure is to establish training frequency. Before implementing strength and conditioning training, we first need to understand what the sport practice schedule looks like throughout the week. Sport practice sessions are a higher priority than strength and conditioning training because they are the most specific form of training the athlete can perform. Therefore, strength and conditioning training should work around the sport practice to ensure that it doesn't interfere with technical and tactical training. Let's use an example of a rugby team for this video to practically apply a weekly structure to. For this team, let's say that the players perform 2 sport training sessions and 1 competitive match per week during the season. During the pre-season, let's say the team performs their regular 2 times per week sport practice, but instead of a competitive match, the team conducts a match-based training session instead. So for this example rugby team, let's say the team training sessions are conducted on Tuesday and Thursday with a competitive match or match-based training session on Saturday. This leaves the strength and conditioning coach to work around the sport practice schedule. For this example, let's say the club has permitted 2 separate strength and conditioning sessions per week, plus a short duration of time to perform on-field training before sport practice sessions. Before getting into the details about what will be trained at what time during the week, we first need to schedule in what days the strength and conditioning training sessions will be conducted. Based on the rugby training schedule, it seems best to implement the strength and conditioning sessions on Wednesday and Friday. We will use this structure for the remainder of the video and establish what qualities will be trained during each session. We have 7 primary athletic qualities that can be trained during a strength and conditioning program. These are linear speed, change of direction ability, plyometric training, power training, strength, hypertrophy, and endurance. Not all of these qualities are important to train for every single athlete, so only the ones which are relevant to the sport need to be included in a strength and conditioning program. For our example rugby player, each of these qualities are certainly important, so our physical preparation plan should address this. However, not all of the qualities need to be performed in the separate strength and conditioning sessions, as some of these qualities can be performed during sport practice sessions. Firstly, change of direction ability and endurance training will already be trained simply through the rugby practice sessions themselves. Loads for these qualities can be managed via manipulating different drills if the strength and conditioning coach has power to influence the sport practice sessions. Furthermore, linear speed training can be performed before or during practice sessions, as it doesn't take a long time and a large space is required, which may not be available in a gym. Therefore, only plyometric, power, strength, and hypertrophy training will be trained in the strength and conditioning sessions in the gym. Let's now look at how the weekly structure will look based on what qualities will be trained on what days. We can see here that on Tuesday and Thursday, linear speed, change of direction, and endurance training will be incorporated into the rugby practice sessions, and the other qualities will be trained on Wednesday and Friday in the gym. Now that we have established what qualities will be trained on which day, we need to apply some load management strategies to ensure that performance is optimized for competitive matches. Let's start with Saturday, which is when the athletes need to be in their best shape for competitive matches. This may not be a concern in the pre-season when no matches are being played, but during the season, it will be when the athletes need to perform at their best. We cannot manipulate what happens in a match, as it is out of the strength and conditioning coach's control. However, we can be quite confident that the athletes who played the majority of the match will be quite mentally and physically fatigued. The players then have 2 days off to allow them to recover from Saturday. They should then be fairly fresh for Tuesday's practice session. Since the athletes are quite fresh and the next match is 4 days away, Tuesday can involve slightly more taxing training, so for the linear speed element, max velocity sprinting may be incorporated prior to the start of the skill session. Change of direction and endurance training may be of higher volumes, since this is unlikely to affect Saturday's performance. Moving on to Wednesday's strength and conditioning session, this is an opportunity for the athletes to, again, get a decent amount of volume in, as there are still 3 days before Saturday's match. So higher volume and lower intensity training may be prescribed. So plyometrics and power training would involve lighter loads and higher rep ranges, and strength and hypertrophy training would also involve lighter loads with higher reps and more sets. Moving on to Thursday now, our training needs to be less fatiguing since the competitive match is only 2 days away. So linear speed training may involve more acceleration-focused sprinting, which is primarily concentric and less likely to make the athlete sore and fatigued. Change of direction and endurance training should also be lower in volume to not tax the athletes as much. This can be done by performing more tactical drills rather than heavily running-based drills. And lastly, for Friday's session, we want the athletes to leave the gym feeling fresh, so very low volumes of all qualities should be performed. This session can use low rep ranges with heavier loads and a lower number of sets. And now we can finally plan an example week to see how it may be practically applied. Monday will have no training prescribed, although the athletes may want to perform some form of active recovery before Tuesday's training session. Tuesday may involve 3 sets of maximum velocity sprinting for a distance of 30 to 50 meters before their practice session. During their practice session, it could be suggested to the coach that high running distances and lots of change of directions would be beneficial during this particular session. This would expose the athletes to a solid change of direction stimulus and hard endurance training. On Wednesday, we have prescribed higher rep ranges for the hurdle jumps and for the squat jumps. The plyometric exercise is unloaded and the power exercise uses a light load. The strength and hypertrophy training uses higher rep ranges with lighter loads too. Thursday will involve sled pulls for an acceleration-focused speed session before their sport practice. During their rugby practice session, it should be suggested to the coach that lower running distances and change of direction volumes should be implemented. And on Friday, the same exercises have been employed as Wednesday, although the emphasis has changed. The plyometric and power exercises are loaded heavier and less sets and reps are performed. The strength and hypertrophy training also uses heavier loads with lower volume. This should leave the players feeling fairly fresh for tomorrow's match. Thanks for watching, and hopefully you got something out of this video. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already.